Hey everybody, welcome back to Raw Courageous. This is Bobby Wood, and it's Sunday afternoon, September 8th. It's a little bright, as you can tell from the scenery behind me. The sun's out, and it's a little bit warm. Hasn't started cooling off in the afternoons yet, but I expect that'll happen in the next couple of weeks. Went to church this morning, had a great time there. Love doing that. It's part of what I do. I've kind of referred to that before, but this afternoon, I'm taking a little walk through the woods and doing a little bit of deer season scouting. Deer season, archery season opens up here in a couple of weeks, and just trying to get a feel for what's happening in the area around us. So come along. So I was just walking through the timber here, as I mentioned I was going to be doing this afternoon, and stumbled across something that I'm really excited about. Earlier in a video clip I mentioned that the Oklahoma and Arkansas areas down the Arkansas River Valley have received a tremendous amount of rain this year. Flooding has been broadcast nationally, and there have been all kinds of people with damaged homes and losses all over the place. But the bad part about that is what we've seen. The good part about it is that in terms of wildlife and nature, things like this happen. So take a look at this. So I'm literally pointing this camera straight down to the ground and pulling forward in front of me so that you can see what's out here. What I'm looking at is this vegetation right here. Now this is extremely exciting, and I'll tell you why. A closer look at this, and I'll just pull down a little bit, shows that what we have here are leaves on these plants that have scalloped edges, like this right here. Now, for those of you who are into trees and bushes and things like this, you'll recognize a lot of this as saplings, brand new tree starts for white oak trees. That's a pretty important thing when it comes to wildlife game management. Now these things are pretty small. It's going to take years before they mature, obviously, but in their maturity they're going to drop acorns, white oak acorns. White oak acorns are crucial to the food supply to the deer in the area all over the southern region of the United States, and where there are oaks in other places, there as well. Deer love them. So on the scouting effort this afternoon, one of the things that I'm going to be looking for are the acorns on the ground from these white oak trees, and possibly some pin oaks and things like that. What I'm really trying to find out is whether or not the acorns have really started falling or not. I know that I've seen some on the ground scattered intermittently throughout the timber. There are some areas where there's a little bit larger concentration. It hasn't gotten super cold yet. You can see the vegetation all up in the treetops, but they're going to begin to fall. And because they're a primary food source for white-tailed deer and another series of wildlife creatures in the area, squirrels and all kinds of things, I'm going to be looking for where there are larger concentrations of drops, because that's going to be where the natural food supply is going to be. Now, I can supplement with things that are out on the market, things that are available at the farmer's co-op, corn, milo. I'm going to be looking for where there are larger concentrations of drops, because that's where the natural food source is going to be. Now, I can supplement with a number of different things that are available out on the market: corn, milo, supplements for minerals and all kinds of things. But what I really want to know is, naturally, where are the deer traveling, so that I can place my tree stands or place my blinds in areas such as that, and get closer to them on their terms rather than mine. Now, in those moments of the deer season where the acorn crop is pretty much eaten up or has already been taken over by bugs or things, or squirrels, really, quite frankly, then I will probably add to what's available to them in the form of corn and milo and things that are available. So we'll see more about that as we go. So I want to share something about these acorns. I mentioned the flooding a few minutes ago. You know, that's a great thing in terms of acorn production. These trees that are all around me soak up a lot of water, and that's how they generate their acorn production. I expect that what we're going to find is that the acorns are going to be bigger than they typically are in a given year because of the water that we've had here. It's been a record year in so many different ways. Now, I expect that they're probably going to fall earlier than they would normally, because they've gotten so heavy and because they've gotten so big. Now, today it's kind of a nice day. It's warm. It's really warm outside, but there's a nice breeze. Now, as the temperatures cool off and as the season changes, obviously the wind's going to blow a little harder more frequently. That's going to knock more of them to the ground. The squirrels up in the tops of the trees are going to be knocking off the ends of the branches too, and knocking acorns off the trees as they come and try to prepare for the winter themselves. So I'm very eager and very anxious to see what kind of acorn crop we have and where it's at. Check out this spot right here. Now, I've been hunting almost 40 years of my life, and I've seen game trails and wildlife trails that are small. I've seen some that are almost completely unnoticeable, and then I've seen things like this that are practically highways. Now, if you'll look right down the center of the camera right in here, that is a very well beaten down line of travel corridor. Now, I know because of past experience here that this is being used by deer, it's being used by raccoons, it's being used by possums and squirrels, armadillos, and just about everything that we have in the area. But it's leading down to that creek. Now, one of the reasons why these trails are so important in finding them right now is that in about a month, it's the first week and a half of September, in about a month and a half, once the temperature drops far enough that the vegetation starts coming out of the trees, then these trees are going to drop all these leaves onto these trails. And what they're going to do is they're going to cover up exactly what we're seeing right here. So pre-season scouting is really important in knowing where the travel corridors are, so that when it does get covered up, you've already got a head start on where things are going to be happening. One of the things that I've been doing as I've been walking around out here is picking up acorns that look like they're pretty fresh drops. Now, this is not very many right now, but you can see the different sizes, and the greener they are, the more recently they've come down off the trees. But as I mentioned, I'm looking for a higher concentration, a more localized concentration, because that's where the deer are coming through and traveling right now, and the rest of the wildlife. Now, I will supplement. It's what I do late in the season in order to draw the deer into a central location where I can get some pictures on my game cameras and things like that to see what's really in the area, what's traveling through. Later in the season, when we get into the rut period and things like that, there will be animals that will be traveling for miles. But what I want to see right now are those animals that are local and those animals that are frequenting the property right now, so that I can manage my hunting activities a little more appropriately. And what I mean by appropriately is I believe in taking adult animals and harvesting those for a number of different reasons. There's more meat on an adult animal than there is on a young yearling or something like that. When I was younger and really didn't know any different, one of the things that I did is I got super excited about deer hunting, and I took the first thing that I saw, or certainly attempted to do so. Wasn't always successful. No one ever is. But I was taught by my dad, before I was able to shoot anything else with a rifle or a firearm, I needed to take one down with a bow. The reason he wanted me to do that was to demonstrate that I had acquired the skills needed to be a successful hunter, and a hunter who was responsible in the way that I went about it. This right here is a great example of one of those spots that I've deposited some corn early in the season just to see what's coming through and how it's being eaten. If you take a good look at this, a lot of the kernels are broken up. They're not completely broken, and the breaking up of the corn kernels is pretty important to me right now, because what I deposited was whole corn, meaning whole kernels. So whatever's eating this is probably something like a squirrel or a raccoon, and that kind of thing can be confirmed with the cameras once I get the pictures off of the SD cards and things. Now, that's not to mention that there aren't deer coming through here, because I certainly believe that there are, but deer have a tendency to eat the whole kernel, or at least that's what I've seen in my experience. Now, I'm sure they probably drop things here and there every once in a while, but by and large, they'll eat the whole kernel. So whatever this is that's hitting this really, really hard is probably not deer. And given the last couple of seasons and what I've seen coming through here before, it's probably, like I said, squirrels or raccoons or something smaller. This right here is something that I want to talk about too. You can see right through the center of the frame from the lower left to the upper right that there's an old tree that has fallen. Now, it's not a very big one, and there's a lot of vegetation around it. But the thing that's important to note is that there are leaves all over the ground from last season, the last couple of years. This tree's down, there's some shaded area, it's hot outside, it's September, and this is a prime area for things like copperhead snakes and other snakes like that. So a word of caution to all of you who are watching this and are interested in pre-season scouting and things like that. It's very important to pay attention to what you're walking over, what you're stepping on, what you're stepping around, and looking for areas like this that at some point are prime
territory for snakes and things that can be hazardous to your health.
Something else that I want to mention too is that when you're out hiking through the woods in the late summer, early fall, when things really haven't changed seasonally yet very much, make sure you take water. It gets hot out here, you can sweat a lot, you lose the ability to perspirate after a while if you haven't hydrated. So make sure that you've got something with you. I typically carry a couple of bottles of water in the back of this backpack right here, anywhere and everywhere I go. So good practice. It'll give you the energy that you need at the time that you need it. So make sure that your backpack's got one.
Now this right here is a perfect example of something that's really exciting to find. If you look, the ground is bare right here. The leaves have been pulled out around it. There are a number of reasons for this, but I'm going to pull up just a little bit and show you that there is a property fence right here, a barbed wire fence. Now, it's not a very high fence. In fact, the two wires at the top have been collapsed on top of each other. But this right here is a pretty quick indication or sign that animals, more particularly deer, have been jumping this fence or crossing this fence right here and traveling in whatever direction that they were headed. Something that's great to find. Now the sign right here, looking at it, there hasn't been a lot of recent traffic over the top of this, or at least the ground may be too hard to show it. But after a rain in a spot like this, it's a really good idea to come over and take a shot at it with your eyes and scan it yourself to see what kind of new prints are here, so that you can see whether or not you've got young animals crossing over
or mature animals crossing over. You can actually distinguish between does and large bucks by the hoof prints that they leave. And we'll talk more about that as we get into some signs that actually show it.
Now I want to take a chance to give a big shout out to the guys at Trophy Rock. This is a 12-pound simulated mineral lick block, or rock as it looks. The idea and the concept comes from things like salt blocks that farmer co-ops have and farmers and ranchers have used for years for their livestock, for cattle, for horses, for sheep, for all kinds of things like that. But it works just as effectively
for the deer population. So I'm really pleased with this product. I've used salt blocks and salt rocks for years, and I will absolutely continue to do so. The really cool thing about these salt blocks and these salt rocks, like that one right there, the one that I just showed you, is that the animals that lick them are going to need and want water very shortly thereafter. So whenever you put these things down, make sure that you have a water supply nearby so that they can go back and forth between them.
Now this right here is also a perfect example of a wildlife hotspot. You can tell from the leaves right down here in the edge, there's a little arc right there, that the leaves have been pulled back off to the right, and this right here is bare ground. Now you can see that there are some corn kernels and things like that right there. What I was trying to do is pull the deer and the wildlife into a localized area, a concentrated area, so that I could get some pictures taken of them. But if you look at this, they have torn this absolutely to pieces. The ground is torn up. There's a dugout area right down here, right there, and it has really been worked over hard. The leaves have all been scuffed up where they've been searching for whatever they can find. I also want to give a huge shout out to the guys at Wild Game Innovations. They make an incredible product like this camera right here, and we'll get some more pictures and things like that from it later. But this is a great placement. I've got this about 2.5 or 3 feet off the ground, so it's looking deer in the eye as they come across. And I want to tell these guys thank you so much for producing these kinds of products, and really the whole market on these cameras, because it really is a game changer in how people hunt. You're able to identify specific animals as they grow over time. You can harvest more patiently and more deliberately and more appropriately as you're able to see what's coming across your property.
Talking about great products, you can see that I've got a ball cap on my head for Mossy Oak. I am a tremendous Mossy Oak fan. I love everything that they have. I always have. They make great products, and I have had tremendous success with them. So I want to thank those guys over at Mossy Oak too for everything that they've done all over the years. Now, one of the things that I make a very deliberate attempt to do is not to disturb anything that I possibly can avoid disturbing.
And I also try very, very hard not to make very much noise. Now, granted, I'm filming a video right now, but if you can tell, I'm stepping with my toes through these leaves. Now, leaves are going to make noise anyway, unless they're wet, but if I can get some bare ground or some rocks that are stable, I will do everything that I can as I go through the timber to stay on those cleared areas first. That way I'm not sending signals throughout all of the timber that I'm here. I'll often pause and try to imitate or mimic the wildlife that's coming through here so as not to disturb them and rattle them. Now, I've moved just a little bit, but I want to be able to share with you the difference in the noise between whenever I'm walking on my toes delicately and deliberately through the timber on a beaten down area or a bare area over what it sounds like whenever I'm walking through leaves. Those are the leaves. And this is the bare area right here. Now, I've tried to share hunting with my children, and several of them have taken to it. And it's been a great thing for us to share. But one of the things that's been hardest for them to learn in their youth when they were little was how to walk as quietly as possible through the timber. Now, this is a big deal in the late season and mid-season, because anything walking through the leaves or the timber is going to set the wildlife off, because they have ears that are practically radar dishes on the tops of their heads. So anything that you can do to minimize the noise is going to be extremely helpful in the long run. Now, I'll move through the timber just a little bit further, and I want to show this to you because this is a pretty big deal too. If you look at the ground in these darker areas underneath the leaves, like right over there and down through here, this area has been torn up to a degree, and the reason that has happened is that there have been acorns falling on the ground here that have been getting picked up and searched for by deer and everything that we have here. Now, I've talked earlier in this video about white oaks. Now, this pairing of trees, these are white oaks. Now, the leaves down here at the bottom have been chewed up on by bugs and things like that, but if you look at the scalloping on the leaves, that's exactly what these things are. So we do have some white oaks that are dropping acorns at this point. Now, I found a spot nearby where I know there's a bedding area, at least from past seasons. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to place a camera right here because I really don't know what's coming through here this year. I'm not going to leave any corn. I'm not going to leave anything like that. I just want to see what's naturally occurring here. And one of the things about camera placement too is it's not just to be able to identify what's coming through, but it's also something that can be useful and helpful in identifying which direction the animals are actually moving, whether they're moving from north to south or east to west. And when you couple the timestamps on these photos with the weather that you're able to capture on the news or the Weather Channel or things like that, you can start to match up and compare what those movement patterns look like as the weather changes. And that's something that's also pretty important. So I'm going to set this camera up, and I'm not going to see it today, but hopefully in the next couple of days, maybe a week and a half, we'll see what's happening here. Maybe nothing, maybe something. We'll see. Now, folks, check out this great product from Gamekeeper. This is an SD card holder, and I love it. Check this out. If I pop the top off of it, there are places here for 8 different SD cards. And so as I'm traveling through the woods, traveling through the timber, checking cameras or whatever things like that use SD cards, whether it's a personal camera or a game camera or something like that, I can keep those things in this nifty little pocket right here. Check this out. Popping the clip on the side right there.
and open that dude up just like that. How cool is that? One of the things that I've done before is lost SD cards, and it makes me sick when I've got pictures of good animals on there. And this prevents that. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You at Gamekeeper.
So quite honestly, this is one of the other reasons why I like to preseason scout. This is a tree that fell at some point this spring. I don't know if it was a lightning burst or what. It really doesn't matter. But this smells a whole lot like firewood that's just dying to be cut up. And you can see that there's a tree down below it that's got a split in it right there that was already started to be cut. And you can see the stump right there next to it. But this is firewood, and I can't wait to get to it.
Well, all right, folks. Looks like we had a dry day as far as the acorn finding was concerned. I mean, I've got a couple in my hand. No big deal there, but I expect that over the next couple of days, couple of weeks, that's going to change and that they're going to really start falling in earnest. But that's going to be a wrap for today. Again, wanted to thank you. This is Raw to Rageous, and we really appreciate your support. Drop us a like, drop us a subscribe. Wait for more videos because they're on their way, and we look forward to hearing from you. Send some comments, send some questions. Give us some feedback on how we're doing, and we look forward to sharing this time and sharing the rest of our time with you as we transform this property from raw to rageous. Talk to you soon. How crazy is this? I just put the wrap on that video that I was going to splice together and pull together and clean up a little bit when I was walking out, and I noticed this as I'm looking at the ground. Check this out. Brand new acorns on the ground, and the tops and the caps have been chewed through and all over the place around the base of this tree. Here's some right here. Check this out. Check it out. They're everywhere right here. They're literally all over the place. There's a nice big fat green acorn right there, and part of a shell right there next to it, and right over there. Check that out. And right down there. So, been talking about hotspots and finding these things. Well, it seems to be that we might have actually seen them fall. So, mental note taken. I'm going to keep this logged in the back of my mind. We'll keep a serious eye on this spot right here and watch it over the weeks to come and check out what's coming and happening in the trees around us. So, one last thing. What kind of tree is this? Well, let's take a look. So this is straight up almost from where I took that last little spot video, and I'm looking at that area of leaves right there. Now I'm going to zoom in so that you can get a little better feel for what those leaves look like. Hopefully I can hold it steady. Those look like pin oaks, or of some sort of pin oak, but there are white oaks all around it. So exciting times. It's about to happen, and we'll see you next time.